Palestinian versus Babylonian sources. Let us now have a closer look at the rabbinic sources that offer us their view about Jesus and Christianity. More specifically, at the relationship between the Palestinian and Babylonian sources. Here the distribution is quite revealing. The texts that most graphically and bluntly refer to Jesus' life and faith are preserved only in the Bavli. This applies to Jesus the Bastard, sort of a whole, although Ben Stada Satra does appear in Palestinian sources. Tosefta Yerushalmi, not by accident, as someone who imports sorcery from Egypt, Yerushalmi, the identification with the bastard Jesus, and accordingly the counter-narrative to the New Testament birth story is reserved for the Bavli. Jesus, the bad son disciple, guilty for sexual promiscuity. Jesus, the frivolous disciple who practices magic and becomes an idolater. The Yerushalmi parallel leaves out any reference to Jesus. The graphic and detailed description of Jesus' execution. Jesus' disciples as gods for his own destiny. Jesus' punishment in hell. This is an impressive list which most conspicuously includes the two major counter-narratives about the cornerstones of Jesus' life in the New Testament, his birth and his passion. No doubt therefore that the gist of the rabbinic Jesus narrative is preserved in the Babylonian Talmud. We can even go to a step further. It is Ravizda, the Babylonian Amora of the third generation, the beginning of the 4th century CE, who transmits the traditions about both Jesus' adulterous mother and the bad son disciples as well as in the Eliezer ben Hilkiah story, the instruction to keep away 4 cubits from the prostitute. Ravizda taught at the Academy of Surah, and it may well be that this academy was a center of the Babylonian Jesus tradition, which by no means, however, was restricted to Surah, since the rabbis of Pumbedita take part in the discussion about Jesus' mother and her husband Lobo. By a contrast, a very different picture emerges from the Palestinian sources. Then Jesus is not addressed directly. The main focus is put on the healing powers of his disciples, most prominently the enigmatic Jacob of Kefar Shechania Sama, and hence the heretical character of the sect founded by him. The Palestinian text centers around magic, the power inherent in magic, how it works, and the authority connected to it. On this background, Rabbi Eliezer is portrayed as someone who sets up his magical authority against the authority of his fellow rabbis and who accordingly needs to be eliminated. The charges brought against him by the Roman governors seem to refer to unjust rights that are well known from pagan and Christian sources. Hence, the Palestinian sources are aimed at the origin of the Christian sect, emerging out of the common ground of Judaism. They reveal the truth that the Palestinian rabbis must have felt. They fear, but also the mechanisms of their defense. As such, they reflect their simultaneous rabbinic attraction to and repulsion from Christianity. They describe the very beginning of the parting of the ways, a parting, however, that should take several more generations, but it needs to be emphasized that this snapshot is frozen, as it were, predominantly in Palestinian sources. There, the news seems to have been caught in the process of taking shape as a movement against the rabbis, the rabbinic form of Judaism, against rabbinic authority, a movement moreover that came under the suspicion of Christian libertinage. In sum, whereas the Palestinian rabbis' view statements reveal a relative closeness to the emerging Christian sect, to its very origin and local color, the Bavli's attention is focused on the person of Jesus, particularly his birth and death. In other words, it is amazingly enough only the latest source, and moreover the only that is geographically much farther removed from the scene of action, that explicitly and openly deals with the main character of the events. This striking result deserves our attention all the more so since it has been largely ignored by most of the scholars dealing with Jesus in the Talmud.